Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Rob with Technique Coding, and in this video we are continuing our tutorial on the UIKit coordinator navigation pattern. In part 3, the last video, what we did was we added a tab bar at the very bottom of the screen so we can navigate when we are logged in, and we finished hooking up the login logout cycle. So you can log in, navigate throughout the main area of the app, and you can now log out. So let me show you a little bit here. So this right here is the app. So like you can see, I'm logged in right now. Well, I'm considered logged in. Again, this is only navigation. If you were watching the previous videos, you know that we aren't hooking up any kind of data flow here. This is only for navigational tutorial purposes. But if I click on this More button, go into the More screen, click on Account and hit Log Out, I'm logged out. I can do my whole registration flow like we talked about in the second video, I believe it was. And if I hit Submit, it goes back into the home screen. In today's video, we are going to hopefully finish all of this. So we're going to finish the account flow, which includes the edit account. And then if I actually edit this email here, which the simulator is being very slow, it will lead me to a new confirm email address screen. You hit submit, and that's going to take me back to the account screen. So we're going to finish that. We're going to create this location screen. We're going to hook up the account flow as a subflow within the locations area. And then we are going to create our very simple upgrade screen that does basically nothing. It's just there as an example of how you would reuse a screen in multiple areas of the coordinator pattern navigation, as well as reuse an entire flow in this navigational pattern. Might be a little bit easier to actually show you this. So what we're doing is we've got most things done already, but what we're going to be doing is we're going to finish this account flow. So we've got this account screen. We need to create the edit account screen, then the confirm email screen. After that, we can finish up the locations flow, hook up our account flow into the locations flow, and then create the upgrade screen and then add everything back to our more flow. So just to reiterate, this pattern allows us to make our flows into components. These components can be reused, reapplied, and edited much more easily than using something traditional like a segue or manually handling navigation without a organizational pattern. So what we're going to do is go back into Xcode, and I will hide my face so you can go see here. So the first thing we need to do is we are going to finish up the account flow. To do that, what we need to do is we need to create an edit account screen. So in the folder structure here, I'm just going to create a new group, and it's going to say edit account. Very simple. Again, be as obvious as possible with naming. Although, they say there's 3 of the hardest things in software development are one, what do they say? 1 is naming, 2 is numbering things, and that's it. If you get the joke. Anyway, bad joke. Moving on. All right, SwiftUI, we have edit account view. And in this one, we will also have a hosting controller because we will have a custom back button. In the previous video, I showed everybody how we would handle creating a custom hosting controller inside of the account screen that was in charge of handling the navigation bar at the top of the screen. Let me move this out of the way. So essentially, this little back button right here is a custom view, and we did that so we could hook that back button into our custom coordinator navigation system. You can, like I said before in the previous video, you can add that. You can reuse or use the system's back button functionality. It just won't be connected to the navigation pattern, which is fine depending on your use case. you will just code the way you feel fit in your own project. Edit. And I'm just preemptively creating the view model file here. But let's go back into the account screen and gives ourselves a little bit more room here. Close some of these up top out. And then, so this screen is going to look like this. Oh, wrong simulator. Just a name field, email field, and a submit button with a back button. That's it. So it shouldn't take us too long here. Let's crack away at this. No crazy formatting this time around. Let's see. We don't currently have the view model declared yet. So this is going to cause an error. So what we'll do, oh, if you didn't know, this little breadcrumbs bar at the top, you can't interact with this. The right-hand side right here is the actual structure of the current file you're in. The tab on the left of that is everything, all the files that are currently in the working directory you are currently in. So we can switch back and forth pretty easily. And just like all the other files, we need a nav delegate for this. And again, in the other videos, this adhering to any object, basically it's saying that the things that can adopt this protocol have to be of a reference type, which is any object. And we need that in order to use weak references on it. And since we aren't actually doing anything with the state on this, we're just kind of throwing in some functionality here to emulate what might happen if a proper state was being handled on this. So this edited email is just saying that if the field itself was edited, then we're just going to act like they submitted a change so we can show the correct screen that would usually show if a change had happened, which would be the confirm email screen after this. In a normal flow, when you are changing email addresses inside of an application, the standard is after you hit submit to then send a two-factor authentication email out to have the user get a code. There's many ways to do this, but one way is to actually get a code, and then they would enter the code in here, and then you would send a request to the backend stating, we verified they are the owners of this account. Go ahead and commit the new email address as their main email address. Until that commit action occurs, the backend shouldn't at least change their main email address to what they had added in this field. So basically we're just emulating that action with this whole edited email thing. Okay, so moving on, we say weak var nav delegate. I'm going a little bit backwards. Usually I start with the view, but this tutorial I'm actually going to start with the view models, so then we don't have to kind of bounce back and forth. And you've probably seen this enough right now in the past two videos where, again, a lot of these things, once you get the paradigm down, it's just redoing the same thing over and over and over again, which is good. You don't want to reinvent the wheel too many times. And if you're consistent, it helps new developers onboard, and it also helps your own sanity, so you don't have to keep changing things up. I always tell new developers that if you back tabbed, if you don't know how to properly organize your code, the best thing you can do is just be as consistent as possible, because even if you're wrong in the consistency, the fix will be able to be applied across all of the consistent code that you have. So if you're just starting out, it's better to be consistent than trying to fumble around with different architectures as you move forward. Be consistent in your wrongness, and that's easier to fix, essentially. All right, nav delegate on edit account email, and basically just if the email does not equal the original email, which is john@example.com, because it's constant, we don't really care. This is that quick check to see if we've edited it. Nav delegate on edit account back tapped. Okay, so that's it. I mean, it's very small. There's not much going on with this class right here. So we've got the protocol method, we've got the view model, and we've got the actions. So going back into the edit account view model.init, vstack, we're going to say labeled input view, which I don't have quite yet. All right, so we need to make this view right here. So what we'll do is come down here. No, my caps lock's not working right now. There we go. Okay. So there are a couple ways to handle creating an input like this. One of the ways is to create a whole new view, which is what I'm doing right here. Another way is to actually create a text view style to then apply all these. And even so, in that text view style, you can even add other views into it. But I might go over that in a different video. Right now, we're just going to be using a regular SwiftUI view for this. Spell correctly there. There we go. The only downside to using a class for this rather than a text input style is that you have to add all of this extra context to edit that text field. So there are some downsides. It's kind of, I wouldn't say it's cleaner. It probably is easier to understand maybe, but just know that there's more than one way to actually do this. In a future video, I will start to use actual styling. So down here, if we go into the text field styles, for instance, this is what it looks like if we go back to what we currently have. I can actually make this into have a VStack, for instance, and then make the configuration go into the VStack like this, and then add my new label right here, like that. And that does make things easier. I'll start to use that here in the future, but just know that there are a couple more convenient ways to do this. It doesn't really matter if you're not using things like highly configurable views, and if you're not using focus. So focus is actually a good reason to use that style. Then you don't have a nested text field deep down that you have to deal with focus values. You would have the text field at your root level, and then you can directly add your focused values to. Again, not in the scope of this context, but just be aware that there are reasons you would do it that way. Let's see, we need the var body some view, and then let's give us some more space here so we can eventually see this in the previews window. We're gonna have a vstack. Again, our target is this right here, so we just want a label and a text field underneath it. I should say text, not label. So what I'm doing here, when you have a text view and you give it, so when you have a text view, what it's going to do is the text view itself is not going to span across the entire view. You have to force it to do that. It's only going to, SwiftUI views will only take up the amount of space that it minimally needs. So in this case, we need to tell this text view to span across the entire screen widthwise, and we do that by using max width infinity. And then we just say the leading for the text alignment is, or sorry, the alignment for the text view is leading to push it to the left-hand side. That's what we're doing here. Placeholder. Give it the value. Content type. Move this up a little bit. No gray, huh? Okay, color, UI. System gray 6. Okay, it's complaining about something here. There we go. One little missed capital letter. Isn't that the sake of programming? You know, I heard back in the years and years ago when they were using punch cards to actually program, you didn't have these nice little editor features that tells you what's wrong, like this right here. None. UI text content type. Is there a default? I think this can actually be optional, right? Yeah. So we're just gonna leave that optional. But anyway, with the punch cards, they didn't have all these nice editor features. And one of my old managers said that it took him 48 hours, so 2 days, to find one comma was wrong. And with those punch cards, you had to reprint like 80 of those things in order to actually compile the program again. Honestly, I don't know if I'd be a software engineer if that was the case. I'd probably be doing something else. I think we can use curly brackets for the overlay, if I'm not mistaken. Did rectangle, corner radius, let's say 10, stroke, colored gray, the line width is going to be 1. Okay. So then what we're going to do is we're just going to show this up top here. Value. We're going to say for the padding, we're going to reuse the padding on this. So like in the other video, what I usually do when I share different padding values is I actually come up here and I say private enum constants, and not to sound like a broken record, but just to, if people missed it in the last video. I use enum, so you can't instantiate the constants like you can a struct. That's it. There's no, you can use a struct if you want to. This is just the way I do it. We're going to say 10 up top, 10 leading, not 210. Bottom 10, 10. Now you could just say padding 10 for each one of these, and that's still valid. But in this case, it's just as valid to say that. And then if you need to change anything across the entire usage of this constant, you have an option to do that. On the previous video, I go a little bit more in depth on the pros and cons of this. I'll leave that out of this video for right now. Input view. We've got email. Control M as in mom. And what we can do is we wrap that with Control M. The value is going to be view model.email. Content type is going to be email address. So the system understands that the field is for email address. And then auto capitalization is going to be never, because we don't want to capitalize anything, at least unexpectedly, in an email address input. Add the padding to it. And then before we move on, let's just run this preview. Okay, so we are running this preview right now, and as you can see, we've got the two fields. Now all we gotta do is add the button and the hosting controller, and we're done with this screen. So just add this button to the screen, and we'll say dot padding just to push it down from the fields there. Say view model dot on submit. And that's it. That's it for the screen. Okay, so now we have to create the hosting controller so we have access to handle the back button. Before I do that, there is one other thing that I did not do quite yet. And that is to, like I said in the previous videos, because SwiftUI likes to hijack the navigation bar, especially the back button, what we actually have to do is we have to say back, navigation bar, back button hidden. We have to hide this from the SwiftUI side, but we can still add it from the UIKit side. But like I said, you have to make sure SwiftUI doesn't try to hijack that navigation bar. We do that by hiding the back button right here, and we are adding it from a hosting controller instead. So new Swift file, edit account hosting controller. Now, one thing, if you're a developer and you are doing a lot of boilerplate, you can use the predictive text for this. I personally don't use that unless I need to. But if you are finding yourself doing the same thing over and over and over again, you can hit Command Shift L on your keyboard and come over to the snippets area and create your own snippet. I do have one in my primary day-to-day Xcode. This is a little bit different, so I don't actually have the hosting controller in here. But it is very useful. I just realized you can't actually see the whole thing, so let me bring this down. It is very useful to put snippets in here so you can save yourself some time when you are using boilerplate or for anything else for that matter. So we're going to say class, edit account hosting controller. This is our own custom hosting controller, and we're going to say edit account view is the SwiftUI view type, and then edit account view.view model is the view model type. And I will hit Command 0 to close out the file inspector. Then this is just the way I like to do it. Again, I like to break all of the related areas into their own extensions. We don't yet have this. We're going to make this function next. So those of you who have only worked with SwiftUI, you'll notice, I don't believe I mentioned this in one of the other videos, but from the edit account view, we could have added the title here, navigation title, if we were working in SwiftUI. Because we are working with the navigation bar from UIKit, we're adding the title from UIKit. And in a previous video, we set up, in the previous video, part 3, we set up this custom back button method right here, function. And then we're going to say selector. We don't currently have this yet. We're making this on back tapped. So let's create that on back tapped method function we just referred to here. You say mark actions. On back tapped. So this error should go away. Just to reiterate for those of you who aren't too used to UIKit, this is the syntax to actually refer to a function. So in most other areas, you can just pass the function signature in, but because UIKit was originally interfaced with Objective-C, it still runs on the Objective-C runtime, which is why we actually have to label this function as an Objective-C function. So this is the syntax to actually refer to a function for the Objective-C methods. And then target is just the object that has the function attached to it or declared within it. In this case, it's just this hosting controller. That's it. That's our hosting controller. So now we've got our edit account screen. Now we need this confirm email screen. And then what I'll do after is I'll then hook it all up into the navigation logic afterwards. So the confirm email screen is going to be used in the auth flow after a user registers, and the edit account after a user changes their email. So this will be the first time we really see the reusability of this paradigm. And because this view is going to be used in a couple different contexts, it's also going to need a custom hosting controller for that back button. So let's come up here. We're going to create a new group. Confirm email and sort these by name. Create a new empty file, not empty file. Here we go. Confirm email view, new file from template. And I just realized I didn't use the SwiftUI template for this. And just because I'm me, I am going to redo that. An extra like 10 lines of code, and I just didn't want to write it out. 'Tis the habits of a software engineer. Okay, so just like in the last one, I'm actually going to start off with the view model. Sort these by name. Now that we have that view, and just to reiterate what our goal is here, we want to get to this screen right here. So we're just going to have a piece of text, a text input that's styled with a border, and then a button. That's it. So let's do published var. And then the protocol we've got here for the nav delegate. Now we could say a week var nav delegate. And then for the actions, I'll give us some more space over here. Let's see, actions. Again, with little breadcrumbs up here, if you click on this, you can see the flags. These little mark areas show up as little flags up here in this hierarchy. Just going through all the actions that are possible on this screen. Cool. So when we submit it, what we will have is an alert that shows up from this published property. And afterwards, when the user actually hits OK on that alert, this will be called. And then before that happens, if they ended up hitting the back button, we can back them out using this method right here. Okay, so going back into the view, what we'll do is we'll say vStack. So we want our piece of text. And we'll leave it just the way it is. Text field is not going to have a placeholder for right now. The text is going to be the view model, which we got to add up here. And update the signature of the object down here. As a side note, just as a bonus, your view models will have state to them, like a model layer, that kind of stuff. I would highly recommend you mock them for the previews down here using a static variable. So then you can just say .mocked. Some future videos I'll do this, but it's something that's actually really useful when you are working with SwiftUI previews. Email code. Okay. There's a lot of system grays. Okay, let's see if I can zoom in a little bit here. It's better if I use this view. Okay, so we've created the text and the little input window we have right here. Now we just need the button. That's a bit tapped. Push it down from the field a little bit here. Okay. Now, just like in our last view, we need to navigation bar, back button hidden. And now we have to create the alert. And that's it. That's our whole view. Let's move this back out a little bit. Okay, so what we have to do finally is create that hosting controller. What I can do, there's my edit. I'm just going to copy this code into the new hosting controller and rename it. Change the extension signatures because it's primarily going to be exactly the same thing. No sense in, make you all suffer and wait through that. And then we're going to go into this. And we're done. A lot of this stuff, like this custom back button, if it's going to be used all over the place, that's when you would go into the hosted controller and maybe add it as a configuration option. As a rule of thumb, just as a bonus, if you find yourself with subclasses and you want to share logic, instead of adding multiple subclasses that might have like a tweak in theme here or a tweak in functionality there, your best bet is to actually make it configurable rather than having a ton of different classes. It's much more scalable. In this case, this might be one of those situations where we actually do add the option to configure the title from within the hosted controller itself. We could technically already do that, but maybe a custom back button as like a property or something, just so we don't have to constantly subclass it as an option. But in this case, it's fine. Okay, so we've got those two now. Now we have to add it to our navigation logic. So if we come back to our little handy dandy graphics here, so the account flow, we've got the edit account screen. Now we need the confirm email screen, we should just put together. So inside the account flow, we're just going to add these right to it. So let's go into it. I don't believe we actually have an account coordinator yet. We don't. That's right. We just added it to the MoreCoordinator last time as kind of like a hedge. No, don't need that. So MoreCoordinator, what we're going to do is we're going to create the tab flows. We are going to, in the flows section, add this as the account, the coordinator. Okay. Let me close this little bit here. We're going to say UIKit, import that. Okay, So this one, the thing to keep in mind is that previously what we did was we made the more flow, or actually the account screen right here is the place where we log out. But we made it into a direct sub-screen of this more flow, which then delegates up to the more flow, which then delegates to the main flow, which then delegates up to the application coordinator when a user logs out. This time what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to change it just a little bit and make the account flow the thing that that propagation of the logout action starts in. In the previous video, what we ended up doing was we had added the account screen by itself as a subscreen of the more flow. From there, we used the propagation of, basically used delegate methods to propagate that action all the way back up to the application coordinator, which then handled the logout. We are going to be a few flows deep to the account screen in this specific situation, and also the locations flow. Making that connection wherever we reuse the account flow is very cumbersome, and it doesn't really scale well. What we're going to be doing, and this is opposed to what I said previously in a previous video, but as far as whether or not we would see this, what we will be doing is we will be using the notification center to send a notification to the application coordinator to log out. That way we can reuse the account flow wherever we want to without having to maintain that action propagation up to the application coordinator. So we'll handle that in a minute, but just to let you know, like, we're not going to have a protocol method that deals with logging out for this use case. And in fact, we have to go back into the MoreCoordinator here in a bit and remove this method right here. In any case, we will have a protocol method. Because this account coordinator is a subflow of two different flows. So this will be dismissed in a couple different areas. So we do need this delegate method to on account coordination complete. Then what we can do is say weak var delegate. I really feel like my fingers sometimes don't know what they want to do. Okay. Oh. Now actually, we already have this function within the MoreCoordinator right here. So we're going to remove that, cut it, and replace this with what we already had. Then what we can do is we can go back into the MoreCoordinator, come down to the delegate method, this right here, cut that, and then paste it inside the account coordinator, and then change this extension. And because I like doing this, we'll mark this as the account nav delegate, so it shows up right here on the right hand side navigation pane. Let's see, is there anything right here? So on logout tapped, this is going to be a little bit different right here. It's not going to be terrible, it's just a couple lines of code, but this is where we're going to send out that notification. To log out. Okay. So now that we have the show account screen, what we need to do is we need to, very importantly, override that start method. And it's always good practice when you're overriding something just to call the super method, unless there's a specific reason not to. Okay. So from there on out, we do have the edit account screen, so we can say func and we haven't adopted that protocol method yet, so this is going to cause an error for the moment. We'll fix that here in a second. Okay. Now we need the copy that. How many methods did we have on this again? 2. Okay, so we've got that pretty well established. Next, what we need to do is we need to fill out, just double check, let's make sure we have everything here. So when the user taps the back button in the account coordinator, what we need to do is we have to delegate back up and say that the account coordination is technically complete at this spot. Because if we are on the account screen, which is represented by the account nav delegate, that is the root of this flow. Because that's the root of this flow, we need to end the coordination for this flow. Now, we don't technically need to pop the view controller here, depending on the context. So you could, in the delegate method that handles what we just called, or the delegate, I should say, you could just use the coordinator that's passed in and just say the coordinator.presenter.pop view controller from right here from the delegate method. Now, there's no hard rules on this. Just do what you feel is better. So whichever way you feel like going, just take that. It's not going to hurt anything. It might be more beneficial to have it in here, only so you're not repeating yourself constantly, if that flow is going to be dismissed the exact same way wherever you are. In this case, since it's a back button and not the exit button, it's always going to be within a navigation stack. So it's okay just to pop the view controller from within this flow, if that makes sense. Now, when the user does tap the exit button, we're going to say presenter.dismiss. True. And then after that, what we should really do is we should, after it's dismissed, actually before, I think. So this dismiss action, my thought process right now, to give you a little bit of insight into my brain, which might be a little scary. So this dismiss action will take 0.3 seconds. It's the standard animation time for an iOS dismissal animation. Now, if you don't want to wait on that animation before we actually call this delegate method to stop the flow, to do whatever cleanup work you need to from within the parent delegate, what you can do is add a closure to it. And what this closure does is it will wait until after the animation is complete. Oh, wait. It will wait until after the animation is complete, that 0.3 seconds, and then call what's in here. The signature looks, if you want to dismiss, it's this right here, if we were looking at the autocomplete. This is nice depending on the situation. Also, do yourself a favor, always call weak self in order to, so there's no strong retain cycle. But in this case, I don't think there's any issue with just doing it like this. We don't have anything specifically waiting on that animation, so we're just going to call the delegate method immediately after. And this will be called before the animation finishes. On account edit tapped. So we're just going to say show edit account screen, and then right here we need, let's see here. So we're going to say we do need one extra thing. So this screen is kind of special just because it is used in two different contexts. So if we come back to our flows here, we've got the account flow that's being presented modally from within the locations flow, and we also have it presented in a push animation from the more flow right here. So there's two different types of exit buttons that the screen is going to need. So it has a back button when it's pushed onto the navigation stack from the more flow, and it has an exit button in the top right if it's presented modally from the locations flow. Now, we can actually detect that from the UI navigation controller that is used as the presenter. Essentially, if there's more screens in the navigation stack before we show this account screen, we know that we're actually being pushed on the navigation stack because we're reusing the presenter. If the presenter does not have anything within it, when we first show this account coordinator flow, then we know that we're most likely being presented modally. There are a few other checks we can do in there if you want to be really robust with this, but for the most part, we just need a way to detect whether or not we are embedded in a navigation stack. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to add this to the BaseCoordinator. And I'm going to minimize everything here just so we get a little bit more room. And I'm going to, down here, add a new area called utils. Okay, so before I add this util method, how we actually maintain that state, I'm going to add a new private set var embedded in existing nav stack flag. And then within the start method, this is why calling the super.init method is pretty important whenever you're subclassing a class, because we need to add to this. If we didn't do that, we'll have to add that call to the super method in a lot of these other coordinators, which I actually don't think we did in a lot of these other ones. So now I have to go back and do the exact thing that I just told you we didn't do, because I like being too ahead of myself here. Okay, let's go back into the BaseCoordinator and close out some of these tabs to be organized. So we have this property, which is embedded in navigation stack. Now how do we actually tell if this is embedded in the navigation stack? Well, we say if let nav controller equals presenter as. So obviously, if the presenter is not a navigation controller that manages a navigation stack, this won't make any sense. So only if that's the case will we be able to set this property. Now, technically speaking, we should actually probably add this into the initializer, but you can either use this in the start method or in the initializer. If I added it in the initializer, I wouldn't have had to worry about the override of the start method. But this is just as valid. And this is actually a better method too, because once the presenter is given to you, there's no chance that another developer can come in and do something weird in the start method, or even before the start method lifecycle occurs with the presenter, to know whether or not the actual state is embedded. So this is probably the better way to do it anyway. So okay, so once the initializer is set, we are checking to see if we're embedded in navigation stack. One thing I want to do is add in the utils the ability to understand if this embedded in existing nav stack is true. The way we add the screen to the navigation stack is going to be different. And I want just one method to handle that action rather than have to rewrite that action multiple times. So we're going to say push controller based on nav state. Okay, so the first thing we do is we need to make sure, let me give us some more room. We need to make sure that we're actually dealing with a navigation controller for the presenter. If not, then we can't push. We actually just have to present that view controller modally. And then if embedded in nav stack, if we are in an existing nav stack, we just want to push the view controller on that existing nav stack. Now, if we are not reusing an existing nav stack, then what we want to do is we want to just set that view controller as the root view controller. Okay, so there is one thing that we probably want to do with this method. This should only ever be called for the first view controller. So push initial controller based on embedded nav state. With this context, we can assume that if we are not in an embedded nav stack already, or if we are not embedded in an existing nav stack already, that nav stack is going to be empty. So we technically don't even need the set view controllers. What we could do is just say nav controller, push view controller, and just the animation is going to be dictated by whether or not we are embedded in a navigation stack. If we are, then the animation should be true. If we are not embedded in an existing navigation stack, it's the first view controller, so there should not be an animation. So we can simplify that with this, under the assumption that it is the initial view controller being pushed for that flow, that coordination flow. Okay, so if I hit Command-Shift-O to bring up the open quickly, I can go back to the AccountCoordinator file. And then because this account screen is one of those view controllers that may be presented modally from within an existing navigation stack or not, we're going to use that method here. So push initial controller based on embedded nav state, and we're going to say controller, just like that. Okay, so we should have everything except for the confirm email screen hooked into this account flow. This is going to be a little bit different. I haven't showed you this pattern quite yet. So in either one of the first two videos, I mentioned how with this navigation pattern, you should never have more than one location where you are creating and configuring a screen. So this is an example of creating or configuring a screen, just one of these show account screen methods. We don't have to create, configure, and show all in one method. especially if we are reusing that method. We also don't even have to have it inside of a coordinator. What we are going to be doing with this confirm email screen is we are creating another file, and this is going to be called, supporting should actually be renamed into base, and we'll leave it supporting. In any case, this should be structure. Sorry. We're going to create another group, and that one's going to be called supporting. Okay, supporting. And we are going to create a new file, and it's going to be called confirm. No, don't want that. Getting too ahead of myself here. Confirm email coordinating. Okay, so there's two ways to kind of handle flows with this paradigm. You can either have an actual coordinator, which you do have to have these at some level, or if you know for a fact that a flow is going to be highly reused and you want to avoid starting sub-coordinators, I don't know if we actually have that up here yet. We don't. If you want to avoid instantiating coordinators altogether and you just want to add a flow to an existing coordinator, one thing you can do is you can just create a protocol. And that protocol can handle all of the logic for showing a screen. It can even handle the navigation. There are some downsides to doing it this way that I will explain here shortly, but let me show you what this actually looks like. It's fairly simple. In this case, we're not really handling any navigation for the show confirm email screen. But actually, we will. Hey, let me just show you this for a second. I got to type this out. It's going to be much easier if I just type this out for you. So we're going to say extend. We're going to say protocol confirm email coordinating. Its signature is BaseCoordinator. The presenter has to be of type UI navigation controller, and then it's going to handle the confirm email nav delegate. Let me push this down. Okay, so what we've just done is we've created a protocol method saying that any coordinator that adheres to this also needs to adhere to the confirm email nav delegate. Now, if we look back into there, this just means that we are submitting the actual email or we are backing out of it. Now we can actually do the same thing that we do in normal coordinators and say showing screens. From in here, we can say show confirm email screen. And then let view model equals. I'll make us some more room here. Okay, so this protocol method, whatever coordinator adopts it, will automatically get this show confirm email screen out of the box. Now, the downside of doing it this way right here, by also adopting the confirm email nav delegate and expecting the object that conforms to this protocol to also include this is that we just have to rewrite it. It's sometimes necessary to do that. So for instance, because this confirm email is being used in two different contexts, we don't necessarily know that when like in this case, when the confirm email is submitted in this account flow, it goes back to the account screen. If the confirm email screen is submitted, it goes back to the login screen in the auth flow. From the context of this protocol, we don't know that. So we have to force the parent, the object that's conforming to this, to handle that for its own within its own context. Now, if the flow is always going to be the same and we don't care, it's just going to pop and push from the previous screen to the next, we can actually handle this right within this protocol method. So the entire flow for this one screen would be encompassed inside this protocol. It's pretty customizable. It's actually nice when you get to using it. There are a couple caveats to this, and that is when you have a protocol and you are heavily reusing it everywhere, you might have redundancies in place. It's also, like we kind of hinted on a few minutes ago, it's not context aware in this way, shape, or form. So as long as you're okay with that and you don't need specific navigation for certain situations, it's actually pretty nice to have protocols that have flows within them. So we have a protocol way of defining flows. We also have a raw coordinator way, which at some level you still have to have this raw coordinator method anyway. Super not in it. You guys probably saw this before I did, didn't you? I added the wrong signature to these things. Let me go back and fix these real quick before I move forward. So we're not hitting any build issues. Okay, it should be good. Okay. Anyway, let's close these and clean this up. Let's go back into the account coordinator. So the account coordinator, coming back to it again, we need to add this confirm email to this flow. So now that we have that in the nice protocol method, all I need to do is comma confirm email coordinating, and now I have full access to that. Again, what I need to do now is I need to come down here and have an extension. And this is where, because we don't need to adopt the confirm email nav delegate again right here, but this is where these little tiny mark flags come into play. So I know that this extension is dealing with that. And in this case, what we're doing is, like I said before, if we're submitting it, we are going back to the account screen. If we are canceling or backing out, we're going back one screen. So the submit button, what we're doing is we're going to say, let's see, in this context, I'm going to show you a method here because we are using this special method up here, this push initial controller based on embedded nav state. I could add a parameter to this that says popping from confirm or confirm email or some Boolean value flag that says instead of running this piece of code, run the pop to this current account screen view controller. Instead, what I'm going to do is, to be context aware, I'm going to add that code down here inside this method right here. So basically what I want to do is I want to pop up to the account screen if I've submitted from the confirm email screen. So to do that, I'm going to say if let account controller equals This is kind of nice when it comes to imperative navigation. What I just did is I said, hey, the presenter's view controllers, this is the navigation stack, the list of view controllers. If the first one is what I expect it to be in one situation, which would be the account hosting controller, then just pop to it. Actually, this works in all contexts. I could say presenter dot first where this account view controller. Yeah. So what this is basically saying is no matter where the account hosting controller is in the navigation stack, fetch it and just pop to it. That's it. We don't need to know any other context, whether or not it was presented from an existing navigation stack or if this flow was presented modally. It's just going to pop to wherever that account controller is. This should always get hit, but just as a defensive programming tactic, we're just going to say presenter pop view controller true, just in case. It might not look weird, but this piece of code should never actually run. Okay, so then if they hit the back button, then of course the only thing we have to do is pop view controller to the last one, and that's it. Now we do have to fill out this edit account. So on back tap, this is the same thing, presenter.pop view controller, true. So when we go from the account screen to the edit account screen, we can pop back using the back button. If they have edited the email, then we are show confirm email screen. And again, this is coming from that protocol method up here that's defined in this protocol. And we say presenter dot pop view controller true. If they have not edited the email and they hit submit for whatever reason, we're just popping back to the account screen. This doesn't really make sense in a real world situation, but it's just what we're going to do for right now. Okay, let's just double check to make sure we have everything set. On account logout tapped. Okay, here is where we get into the navigation stuff. So just to reiterate what we've just done. We created a confirm email screen using a protocol flow. We've attached that protocol. The account flow now adopts that protocol, so we can call to show the confirm email screen. We hooked it into the navigation logic and hooked everything else up in this flow right here. What we haven't hooked up is this right here, this little logout action. We will do that right now before we get into the location stuff. So to do this, what we're going to do is we are going to create a new extension. Let's minimize this, come into our extensions here, new file from template, and we're going to say notification name extensions. And you'll see why this is actually really useful here in a minute or two. And we're going to say extension notification.name. And we're going to say static let logout logout. Okay, so that's it. What this affords us is we can now come into this account coordinator, and then let me just get my bearings here. We can now come into the account coordinator, and then in this logout area, say if I'll explain this here in a second. Okay. So if we are not embedded in an existing navigation stack, we can assume that we are presented modally. When we are presented modally, we need to exit that modal presentation and then send the request to log out. So this is primarily because if we are modally showing a screen, navigation can still happen behind it. So we want to make sure that that screen is dismissed so we can see the app navigate back to the auth flow. That's what this is right here. So what we need to do is we see notification center.default.post, the name logout. No. So because we actually did a notification.name extension and made it a static variable, instead of trying to write out, notification.name.whatever, it already knows it's notification.name. So the Swift compiler can just get that context. We can just say .logout. That's it. It makes it nice and neat. If we are embedded in an existing navigation stack, we are not presented modally, so we can just call it. That's it. To hook this up, what we're going to do is we're going to go back into our application coordinator. I'll minimize some of this. Then we need to just adopt it. I make it sound super easy. It really is, but it takes us 2 steps. So let logout notification. So there's 2 ways to actually adhere to this. We could just say something like, I'll show you here in a second. We are going to add a new extension here. And this configuration is going to handle observing that logout notification. We're very close to being done. Let's see here. Got this. Configure. And right here, we're going to say, so we could say something like notification center.default.add observer. This was kind of like the traditional way of doing it. Then you would have to obviously handle the removing of the observer. We don't have to actually handle any of that stuff. Using Swift concurrency, we can actually have Swift concurrency handle all of that for us. So you have to import Combine. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a Combine publisher called logout notification equals notification center dot default dot publisher for that dot logout event. So again, this is just the notification.name. I could have said notification.name.logout, but it's just logout. And so this gives us a publisher we can subscribe to. Now we need a cancelable for this. So private set cancellables. I am not going to go over all of the Swift concurrency stuff right now. Just know that this is a way that we can automatically deallocate the observer for this notification. So we say logout notification dot receive on dispatch queue dot main. Okay, so one important thing is I would always recommend observing these notifications on the main thread, because a lot of people use them for like visual updates. And in this case scenario, we are using them to log out and adjust the navigation stack. So this has to be done on the main thread. Oh, wait, hold on. There we go. This is the notification object. We are not using it right now. And then right here, all we have to do is say log out. But we don't have a logout yet. So let's create a logout. Okay, and then we got to store this in the cancellables. Okay. Pass immutable R cancel is a let constant. This needs to be a variable constant. And then the final thing we need to do is inside the initializer, We say super.init. We already did, so we just say configure. And that's it. So if this is deallocated, then the observer is actually, this cancellables handles removing the observer from this. So instead of having a add observer and remove observer, we now just have this one publisher that we adhere to, and that's it. So it's a little bit nicer. So our account screen now has the ability to send a notification off to the application coordinator to log us out. It's perfect. Cool. Let's see. So from here on out, so we've got this auth flow done. Now what we need to do is we need to add it to the more flow. And to do that is actually not that bad. MoreCoordinator. And okay, so show account screen. We're no longer going to have that. So we have showing screens here. This is the first time we're going to show a sub coordinator in this project. So I usually do a starting flows extension. Private. And it's going to say func start account flow. In the presenter, we're reusing the presenter in this one, so it's going to be presented with a push animation. And then we're going to say coordinator.start. And then just like in the main coordinator, we need to store this within the, just like in the main coordinator, we need to store this in the MoreCoordinator's memory. Store coordinator. And now we need to adopt the AccountCoordinator delegate. And for this, let's just double check. I believe what we did when this is called is we are handling the navigation. So in this case, all we really have to do is just free the coordinator. All right, and because I'm paranoid, I just want to double check. So AccountCoordinator, let's see here. Where is this delegate method being called? So we are handling the navigation there. We're handling it there. Okay. Yep. So we can just free the coordinator, and that's it. That's all we need to do. So then we need to call this. So the account flow starts from the main screen, and that is start account flow. That's it. So we're actually going to stop here. I'm running a bit low on time here. In the next video, we'll finish all the other stuff up, but this is the first time we have added an entire flow as a subflow within another flow. I know it's a bit like Inception, but just think of these flows as components. You can add them as subcomponents to these other ones up top, and you can mix and match. So the entire account flow is now inside of our more flow. And if I hopefully build this, it'll succeed if the compile gods like me today. And then what we'll do is we'll hit play. And someone doesn't have a start method. Ah, right. I kicked myself in the foot on this one. Okay, so this is a good case for actually not calling the super.start method. So what we're going to do, if you didn't catch that, I shot myself in the foot here. Please hold. Basically what I did was I called super.start in a bunch of different areas, but I also made sure that the base class's start method has a precondition failure which will crash the app intentionally to avoid a developer from not implementing the start method. So by calling that super method, I just kind of forced the app to crash all the time. So we're going to delete these. I could have also just done a project search and replace, but there wasn't too many of those. Now if I rerun the app, we should be all good. There's a saying in engineering, if you do a huge refactor or a large engineering effort and it works the first time, be scared. It's always the bane of a developer. But okay, so we've got the submit. Locations is still the same. In the more screen, we still have the account, except this time we can edit the account, come in, hit delete. We now see a confirm email address screen. We hit submit, code submitted. It goes back to the account screen, and we can back out. We will be adding this again into the location screen in the next video. I was just running a little bit low on time for this one, but it looks exactly the same. It really does, except this time this logout button is now sending a notification to the application coordinator to handle the logout. And it's fairly well organized in my opinion, but we now have this account flow as a subflow, as a nested coordination flow that we can reuse wherever we want to. In the next video, what we'll do is we will actually finish the entire app because the only thing we have left is to create this location screen, create the upgrade screen, and then hook those in. And then we will be done. I hope everyone followed along really good. Let me know in the comments section below, as usual, if I need to expand on anything or if you want some more information about what we are doing in this video. Like I said in the two previous videos, this one series I'm actually going to add a link to the GitHub project. I'm going to format that for everyone so they have a better idea of what's going on in this. But yeah, we created our first nested coordinator flow. And that's really the power of the coordinator pattern, is to wrap all of these flows as components to be able to reuse them. You'd be surprised how often that'll come up. And if it doesn't come up often, you'll be thankful when it does come up that it's super easy to actually switch it out. I've had it come up at least a few times in every single project where I've had to completely change where a flow starts from and a couple things within that flow. And this by far has saved so many hours. So I hope everyone liked the video. Let me know in the comments below if you'd like to see more of this or different videos, or what you liked, what you didn't like. Make sure to hit that like button, and hopefully you will subscribe to me. I want to bring good content to everyone, and I hope you found value in the video. Until the next one, happy coding.